All right, it looks like we're live. Dr. Hovind, thank you for taking the time to come on and talk with me. I really appreciate it. To get started, to jump right in, I'm an atheist, by which I mean I don't believe there are any reasons to believe in a God. And normally I start these conversations by asking, what reasons do you believe there are for belief in a God? But I'd actually like to start with asking about your position on evolution, because you have quite a prolific history about talking about evolution. So you believe that the diversity of species is indicative of a designer and not evolution. Is that correct?
Well, before you get into a discussion on evolution, you have to define what you're talking about. What exactly does that word mean? If you mean there are variations within the same, what everybody would recognize as the same kind of animal, like 30 varieties of chickens or 300 varieties of dogs, certainly that happens. Yes, there's variations, but they're certainly limited. So if you're talking about microevolution, which I think is a lousy term and we should not use, but they do, then yes, microevolution happens. Variations happen within the same kind of animal, but they're limited to the same kind in every single instance. Every farmer in the world will tell you, if you plant corn, you're going to get corn. You might get, tall corn, short corn, sweet corn, sour corn, but you're going to get corn. If you crossbreed your cows, you're going to get a cow. Anything other than that, anything beyond what we would consider a variation, is a religious belief. People have to believe that it goes farther than that, or they believe back, millions of years ago it was different. Evolution is purely religious. There's nothing scientific about it, if you mean anything above the variations kind. So I think as long as you define the words carefully, I would say yes, there are no reasons to believe in evolution. There are plenty of reasons to believe the variations that happen are limited, and genetically and physically, there are obvious limits to these variations. I think anybody with one eye and half a brain would admit that. So I continually call evolution a religion, because that's what it is. You have to believe in it, and you can have any religion you want. But I resent it being paid for by all the taxpayers in the public schools. That is absolutely insane that we're all paying for one religion to be taught. Should be stopped.
All right, let me tell you what I believe about evolution. And then I'll just like to hear your thoughts on my position.
Okay.
So I only believe in microevolution. That's the only kind of evolution I believe in, and it's just a change in the order of the A, T, C, and G base pairs in the DNA. That's all it does. It causes random changes in those from parents to children, and we can, as far as I know, we can observe that in the lab pretty clearly. And these changes cause physiological changes to your body. It changes the shape and different effects of your body to create new functions that didn't happen before. And those can also be seen in the laboratory. We see these in rats and mice and flies and bacteria and E. coli and all these kinds of things. So there's new functions that come from the different orders of this A, T, C, and G, physiological changes in the body. And the beneficial changes cause the things to last longer, and the detrimental changes cause the things to die faster. And the ones that last longer survive and win out, and the ones that die off don't continue to reproduce. And so we get a continuous change across the entire spectrum of the species or the kind. And so they all end up getting the same positive mutation overall. And all of the species in the world, all life as far as I know it, is all just a different combination of A, T, C, and G. Just everything from plants to bacteria to animals is all just a different combination of the same base pairs and nucleobases of A, T, C, and G. So we can, if we grant that there is, through microevolution, changes in the orders of the A, T, C, and G, and the positive ones survive longer and the negative ones die out, then that could potentially explain all life just starting from a single cell with just the A, T, C, G nucleobases, and that could diversify and explain all the diversity of life as far as I can tell. Would you have any problems with that description of evolution?
I would have a great problem with it. That's not observable. I agree that ATCG variations happen. That's the genetic code. Our computers are all based on binary code, just 2 bits, plus and minus, or 0 and 1. The DNA code is 4-bit, which is 1 trillion times more complicated. It'd be similar to our alphabet in English, which has 26 letters. Now that's quite a code. You can write a whole bunch of different words with those 26 letters, and you can rearrange them, those 26 letters, and make millions of words, and you could, probably an infinite number of sentences could be made from those 26 letters. However, the changes that we see happening in the ATCG sequence, you said the beneficial ones are going to last longer and the bad ones are going to die out. But what I think you're dreaming, SpongeBob style, that this is going to create something new. You said there'll be new functions that didn't happen before. I'd like to see an example of that. I don't think there are any new functions that are anything major, just extremely minor stuff, and it's extremely limited. Plus, you'd have to have two of these have this same thing happen to them at the same place at the same time of the opposite sex. So now the odds of this happening is like flipping coins and getting heads, 2 million times in a row. It's not going to happen. So you have a religious belief and probably don't realize it. You believe that could happen, but that's not science.
So to give you an example, one example would be the butterflies in the islands of Samoa, who one butterfly had a single genetic mutation that caused it to become immune to a certain kind of bacteria, which was a threat to the species. And that butterfly mated with other butterflies that didn't have it. And this species became, because there's recessive and I forget what the other term is, traits. And it became a dominant trait throughout the entire species, and it spread from this one butterfly to the entire species of butterfly in like 5 years. So there's that one just purely microevolution, which we can observe in the lab, the change in the order of the ATCG, which caused a new feature, new proteins and new immunities that didn't exist in any of the other butterflies, in just one butterfly. And from that one butterfly, it spread to all the butterflies in the entire species.
Okay. I don't think that's a demonstration of any new information. A mutation that causes resistance to a bacteria could be a loss of information. Example, if they're going through town handcuffing everybody, hauling them off to prison to kill them, and somebody doesn't have any arms, so they can't be handcuffed. Oh, they would survive and maybe pass on their mutation of no arms to everybody else, but that's not adding information. I don't know the specifics of this butterfly in wherever it was you said, but we could probably, I think if we studied it, we'd find out it lost information that maybe happened to be handy because of the bacteria going around, but that's not evidence of it gaining any new information. So it could have indeed spread this to all the population of butterflies, and I'm glad it did. Thank you for the butterfly. I'm sure that butterflies are thankful for that, and the bacteria is not thankful for that. But that is not an evidence of new information. It is an evidence of a mutation, maybe. And like I said, that's the first time I've heard of that butterfly example. But if you think that little process you just described is going to turn an amoeba to a whale over billions of years, I think that's a religious belief and is flatly silly.
Well, so I'm not sure what you mean by new information, because when I think of new information, I think of a computer code. If you want to add new information to a computer code, there's several ways to do it. One, you can take an old line of text and you can duplicate it. You can remove a part of a text. You can move it. All of these things cause new functions in the code. That's all new information as far as I can tell. Would you disagree?
Well, I would agree that happens with computers, but it takes intelligent input. Put a chimpanzee on your computer for a while, let him tap away on the keys, see what kind of new information he would add. So to say that an intelligent person can modify a computer code, which certainly is true, and get new functions out of it, that's certainly true. And then to try to make that an analogy how life could do this by random chance is absolutely not connected. There is no logical connection between those two lines of thought.
So new information can happen when you copy lines of text, when you delete lines of text, when you move lines of text. They can all cause new functions. And you may not be able to predict what these functions are, but those new functions would be new information. Maybe it's good information or bad information, we don't know. And we can see that happening in DNA with just the microevolution. It can copy lines of text, it can delete lines of text, it can move lines of text, which will cause new functions. Some of these will be good and some of these will be bad. So do you see the connection there that we can add new information to DNA just like we do in computer code of just moving the things around, moving the AT and CG around?
Well, I agree. We can move ATCG around and we can get duplicate lines or we can get deleted lines, but I do not agree that's going to cause a new function. That's where it jumps into religious belief. You're welcome to believe such a thing, but there's no observation of that happening. There's not even a good theory how it can happen. There's a lot of people who hope it does, and they dream that, man, they're looking for information. They're trying to make this happen. But duplicating lines of code, I mean, I've got Microsoft PowerPoint on my laptop. Well, if I had if I downloaded Microsoft PowerPoint 40 times, it's not going to help anything. I just need it once. And it's not going to add any new information. It's a duplicate of the same information, like hexadecimalism, where a child is born with 6 fingers or 6 toes. That's not getting a feather or a wing or a beak. It's getting an extra toe, which it already had toes. So the duplicate information is not a new function. And it's almost always detrimental or harmful or fatal sometimes. And it's almost always going to be blended back into the population. It's going to be swamped by the millions of others that are reproducing. So I don't think this is certainly not a reason to say that this is going to add new information. It's adding duplicate information or deleting information, and it may be scrambling up an already existing code, which of course does not answer the question, where did that code come from to begin with? If we could get a scrambled version of Microsoft PowerPoint, something goes wrong. It no longer will do spell check, let's say. Okay, something is wrong in the code. Okay, that's true, but it doesn't tell you how Microsoft PowerPoint came to be in the first place. There are tens of thousands, if not millions of lines of code in Microsoft PowerPoint, and there are way more lines of code than that in any life form. I mean, the simplest life form you can think of, an amoeba, a bacteria, whatever you want to choose, has way more genetic information than Microsoft PowerPoint, which would be primitive by comparison to the gene code of a bacteria. So no, I do not think adding information ever happens. I think duplicating existing code happens, deleting lines of code happen, mutations certainly happen. There are millions of examples of those, but I don't think you can point to a beneficial one that has been passed on into the genetic code of anything else that is actually added information. I think you'll find, like, people in Africa that have sickle cell anemia are resistant to malaria. Okay, well, both are bad. Malaria and sickle cell are both bad. So if someone has one bad thing, they cannot get the other bad thing. Okay, well, that may be beneficial for a short time, but it's not going to help the overall population of the people, and it's not adding new information. It's just, that's why I say evolution above any variations within the kind. Evolution is a fairy tale for grown-ups. It's a dream. It's a religion. It's not science.
So if we take a computer code and we delete a line of text, that'll cause the computer code to do something new that it didn't do before. It'll do things differently. Would that qualify as new information?
I don't think you can find a single example of that. I think if you delete a line of code, you're going to crash the whole program. You can't, it doesn't happen. This is dream world. This is SpongeBob stuff. But no, if you delete a line of computer code, sometimes you delete one character. You can have one character wrong. Ask any programmer how careful they have to be. How easy is it to stop a computer program from running? Any one of millions of things can go wrong. But to say that changing it randomly is going to add new information, that's exactly where you are wrong. That's dreaming.
So I'm still on that one question. If we remove a line of computer code, because we do this all the time in programming, where we add stuff that we don't need and we don't realize it, and we go back and like, oh, this is extra, I don't need this, I can remove this, or this is causing problems, so I remove this, and it causes the program that didn't work. So it has a problem, you remove the problem, and it didn't work. So you have a program that doesn't work, you remove something, then it gains new information because it can now do this function and work. Does that count as new information?
It is not gaining new information. If I accidentally leave the parking brake on my car and it won't roll very fast, I can take the parking brake off. That's a kind of an example of what you're saying here. So yes, we're not adding any new information. We are taking the parking brake off. It already had a parking brake. It already had an engine, already had a drivetrain, already had wheels, already had lots of things. So to delete a line of code in a computer certainly can happen. To have it happen randomly or accidentally certainly can happen. Probably does all the time. But to say that's new information, that's exactly where you're dreaming. Not true.
Okay, well then I would say that all life has all the same information because it's all just ATCG and moved around. It's just all moved from one place, added, multiplication, subtraction. So they all have the exact same information, just like the computer code. They can all just do different things with the same information.
Well, the computer code is all binary, zeros and ones. I mean, like bunches of them. But to say that therefore it's simple is ridiculous. Microsoft PowerPoint and Microsoft Word have a lot of similarities because they're both built by the same company, and they probably reuse millions of lines of code. Like the spell check from Word and PowerPoint are probably the identical same spell check. I don't know. I would guess that it is. But that's not evidence that it happened by chance with nobody doing it. People deleting lines of code, duplicating lines of code is going to cause problems. It's never going to give a new function. You've said that several times, and it's just simply not true. You might believe it very strongly, but I would guarantee you cannot provide an example where deleting a line of code or scrambling a line of code in your computer has added something new. And to say all life forms are ACTG, which is correct, therefore they're all related, that's where it's incorrect. All words of the English alphabet contain, all words in all English books contain the same 26 letters. but it's different minds arranging them in different ways to say different things. It is not true to say, therefore, all books, all words, all sentences are the same in English. No, they're not. They're not the same. They all have the same 26 letters because that's the code you write English with, but it is totally incorrect to say that, therefore, nobody's writing these books. No, people are writing the books, and people are writing the newspapers and the magazines, and they're using those letters as their code to transmit their thoughts to other people. So it goes from their pen to the paper to your eyes to your brain, and you get their thoughts into your brain with using this amazing code called the English alphabet. But to say that, which I think your analogy would be, that because these letters can be scrambled, C-A-T-G, therefore nobody wrote the code. And that's where it goes into ridiculous.
All right, so earlier you said that if we analyze the butterfly example I gave you, you were going to probably find that it was a loss of information where it lost a line of code, and that caused this new effect. So the analogy I was going for here is that just like in a computer code where we can take out a line of information, it'll cause a new function when we have a bad line or something. The same thing we can see happen just by microevolution. We can observe it in these butterflies where they, if we accept what you said and it's just a loss of information, they have this new function and it works now. It works better. Just like in the computer code analogy, we remove the line of text and it works better.
You cannot give an example of removing a line of text and making it have a new function. You said that about 6 times now.
I apologize for interrupting, but my butterfly example where it's immune to the bacteria, that's a new function.
That is not a new function. Normally, butterflies are already immune to bacteria. Butterflies are doing just fine all over the world. So if a particular bacteria comes into an area, starts wiping out butterflies of a particular population, and one of them has a mutation, something goes wrong in its code that makes it resistant to that bacteria, you're assuming that that's new information, and it is not new information. We don't know. There are no examples, and again, you have to have 2 of the opposite sex in the same place at the same time. You can believe this very strongly, and I suspect that you do, and I suspect I know the reason why you want to believe that very strongly. But that's not new information. I wish you'd stop using that, because it's not. You're trying to sneak that in, and it's simply not true. I'm not going to swallow it. There's no. Taking out a line of code does not add new information or a new function to the computer. It doesn't. And it doesn't with the DNA code either.
Well, I think that's provably false, because we can write computer code, and if we have a mistake or there's some line that doesn't work, we can take the code out and it'll add a new function. It'll cause it to do something new that it didn't do when that line of text was still there. And we can see what
you're taking out a mistake. That's not adding a new function. It's getting a function that it was supposed to have already. It was already supposed to have that function, because it would take thousands of lines of code to do that function. And so you found a mistake. So you took out the mistake. You didn't add a new function. You allowed a function already programmed to function. You didn't add a new function. Like taking the brakes off my car does not add a new function where now the car can roll. It already could roll.
Right. So the program couldn't roll. It was broken. And then we removed it, and then it could roll. So it couldn't roll, so it had no rolling function. And we removed the text, and it could roll, so it had a new rolling function. With the function, it can't roll. Without the function, it can.
So if you removed a line of code, let's say you have a computer. Let's take PowerPoint as an example, because I'm familiar with that one. And we remove a line of code. Can it therefore launch rockets? No. That would be a new function. You're not giving any examples of a new function. Taking the parking brake off of my car does not give it the new function of being able to roll. It already was designed to roll. And the parking brake was preventing it from rolling, and we removed it. You may have a line of code that's scrambled in your computer that's preventing an already existing pre-programmed function from happening. And you find the mistake, you take it out. You did not create a new function. You allowed it to function as it was designed. Simple.
Well, I don't think so, because if I tried to design it and it doesn't work at any point before removing this code, then it has no function yet. It's broken code. It has no function.
You're trying to design it to function. Let's say take spell check as an example. You would like your computer to automatically spot words that are not in the dictionary, and it doesn't recognize it. So it underlines it and flashes a light, says, hey, this word is misspelled. So you go back and you fix the misspelled word. It already had spell check My car already had the ability to roll. A very complicated system of things have to happen to make it roll. The pistons going up and down, the fuel being injected or being inducted through the intake manifold. It already has a really complex system of fuel injection or turning the engine, the pistons, the rings, the bearings. I could explain that for hours if you would like. But the function of a car rolling down the street is incredibly complicated, child's play compared to a cell in your body. But the parking brake was preventing it from rolling. So I took it off. I removed the parking brake function, took a line of code out. I didn't create anything new. I don't see how you can't see it, Tom. I don't think I can help you on this one.
All right, well, let's go back to the point where you said that you need two, like a male and a female, to both have the same mutation for that mutation to go on to the children. Is that correct?
Well, that would depend on which mutation. Of course, a lot of things can happen. Some in the gene code of male and female with humans, for instance, there are some things carried in the male gene code, the Y chromosome, that the females don't even have. So, but if you're talking about a new function, which you keep mentioning, and you cannot see that this is not true, you can allow a function to function, but you're not creating a new function. So, yes, if you want something brand new, let's suppose you get frogs, a frog that grows wings and can fly. Well, that's a new function that frogs don't have. Now it has to find another female frog that also has this function, or else it's going to get weeded out of the population by mutation or atrophy. There's nobody to mate with. So that would be an example. A frog growing wings and being able to fly would be a new function. And there are no examples of that. I'm making it up to show how silly it is. It doesn't happen. So then, yes, you would need two of the opposite sex, and they'd have to be in the same place. If you had a male frog in Indonesia and a female frog in China or in South America, they're not going to find each other. It's not going to work.
So I define a new function as just it does anything differently. If it does anything differently, that's a new function for me. So
that's your problem. The definition of your word is your problem. A new function would have to have new information. A frog that can hop, if it suddenly learned how to walk, okay, it already has incredible muscular structure and skeletal structure and nervous system that allows it to hop, and it probably could get a new function of deciding, oh, I want to walk instead. Okay, that's primitive compared to, if you're going to use that as information, that type of example to say, therefore, bacteria and whales didn't, had a common ancestor, which is what evolution teaches. Bacteria and whales have a common ancestor, and pine trees and whales are related to each other. I think that's dumb. Now, people are welcome to believe that kind of stuff. I don't care what people believe, but I do resent paying for that to be taught in the school system to all the children as if it is science when it's purely religious, and it should not be in our public schools.
All right, so my position is that all life has the exact same information. There's no new information between anything of life. All life has the same ATCG. It's all the same.
I completely disagree. They have the same code. That is not the same as saying they have information. All computers are based on the binary code, zeros and ones. Does that mean all computers have the same information? No, they have the same code. Get it right.
So the ATCG isn't the binary, the 1 and 0. The ATCG is the lines of code. Those are what tell the proteins what they're going to do. So it's like, it's not the 1s and 0s. Those are the lines of code.
That is not correct. ATCG is not the line of code. It is the programming language, like zeros and ones. ATCG is the alphabet. The lines of code contain all those ACTG in a correct order. So the order of those CATG, ATC, however you want to say it, has to be in the correct order to make any sense. Just like arranging letters of the English alphabet doesn't always make sense. There are millions of ways to put a random series of letters together that makes no sense whatsoever. I could simply start typing on the keyboard blindly and produce whole paragraphs of nonsense, meaningless. In order for the code, the CATG, to do any good, it has to be in a particular sequence. It has to be readable by the RNA. So you're dreaming to say that the CATG is the code. No, it is not the code. All this long string of these together, thousands of them together, that's the code that causes the function, like developing an arm or an eye or growing a hair. Just the simple CATG is not simple. That's like saying, well, all the words are made of just letters of the alphabet, therefore fling them out there and that's how it works. No, it doesn't work. You have to arrange them with an intelligent mind to say, let's put these in order. Let's put C-A-T to spell cat.
Right. So I see the ATCG are like the lines of code in Microsoft. It starts with the command line. It starts. So this is. I'm pretty sure I'm right about this, but I just want to.
I'm not right about that. They are not the lines of code any more than ABC is the lines of code in a computer or in English. ABCD is not the line of code. It is the language the code is written in, and there's your problem. CATG, ATCG is the alphabet for the life forms, but it's not the code for the life forms. Any more than zeros and ones are not the lines of code. That's the language the code is written in, but you got to get them in the right order or it doesn't make any sense. All the lines of code are a bunch of zeros and ones if you look at them, but that's not, the 0 and the 1 is not the line of code. It is the alphabet for the line of code.
So we have this ATCG. We have a whole big list of ATCG, and we have microevolution, which causes changes to the orders in this ATCG. And if there are any bad changes, they die off. And if there are only good changes, they survive. So we have to have the good changes to cause the positive evolution. We see this in the lab. We can see it in butterflies. We can see it in E. coli. We can see it in mice. We can see it in flies. We observe that they have positive changes that make them better. And that's so we got that. We got all of that. We can observe it in the lab. Now that would be like saying +1. We can say +1. I can count like +1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But I can't count to a trillion because to count to a trillion would take 32,000 years or something. But it's reasonable for me to think that if I keep adding 1 + 1 + 1, I would eventually get to a trillion, right? That's a reasonable belief, correct?
That's correct. That's mathematics. If you keep adding 1, now is this an intelligent person doing this or is this happening randomly by chance? You get monkeys typing on your keyboard, they're never going to develop a computer code to launch a missile. Never. Not going to happen. So you're wanting to make random changes, just things that just happen randomly. All of a sudden, start to make sense in a computer code, and it doesn't happen. I don't know who taught you it does, but it doesn't. That's not science. That's religion. You can believe that if you'd like, but that's not observable science.
So we have one code which is let's assume that this starts at 0, and it causes changes. So it has a bad change, which is a -1. It has a positive change, which is a +1. The -1 and the 0 die, and the +1 survives. And the +1 has more children. It has a negative change and it has a positive change. And then the 0 and the 1 die, and we have the 2. And the 2 has a children. And it has a positive change and a negative change. And then the 1 and the 2 die, and we have a 3. So just with microevolution, we can get the +1, +1, +1, +1. All of the bad changes die off. Only the good changes survive. So we have the +1, +1. Isn't it reasonable to think that this can keep going on to get to like a trillion, even though we can't see it get to a trillion, just like the numbers example?
It is totally unreasonable to think that would happen because in order for this system to work, what you're dreaming of, you have to have a whole ecosystem around it to supply other things that there's interaction with millions of other kinds of animals. There's a network of life where we breathe in oxygen, give off CO2. The plants breathe in CO2, give off oxygen. Without one, the other dies. Without both, one of them, both die. So it is not reasonable to think, and you imagine like SpongeBob, that this can happen. This isn't observable. It isn't reasonable. I don't think it's a religious belief. And no, you're not ever going to get to a trillion. You're not ever going to get to 5. Because you said if they had children. Hold on, now that involves a whole bunch of really complex mechanisms just to have children. What are they going to eat? What are they going to breathe? What are they going to drink? Where are they going to live? How do you protect them from predators? No, that is totally unreasonable. But if you choose to believe that, that's your choice.
Well, I'm talking about like the fruit fly examples where we do them in the lab. We can see the genetic changes where they add new functions, or if you don't want to call them new functions, they just do something differently or do something better. And the ones that do things better survive, and the ones that do things worse die. We can observe that in the lab. So there's microevolution of these fruit flies. The ones that survive better live longer. The ones that have negative changes die off. And we always get a +1, +1, +1 to get to like a +50 or a +500 or +5,000 in the case of like E. coli and other things. So we can observe all of that in the lab.
Okay, that is totally incorrect. We do not observe fruit flies having any better or new functions. Go study what they've created. They've nuked the flies and microwaved them and x-rayed them and exposed them to toxins of all kinds. They have never developed a fly, any of the flies, of the thousands of mutations, none of the mutations are better off than the ordinary fly they started with. None of them have new functions. Some have no eyes. Some are blind. Some have 4 wings and they can't fly. Some have no wings. You cannot point to a single example in the fruit fly experiment, which is a classic one because they've gone through thousands of generations of fruit flies, which would be the equivalent of billions of years of human life or whale life or dinosaur life. None of the flies are better off than great-grandpa fly. None of them. So whoever taught you there's a better new information lied to you. Get your money back.
Sure, there's a study right here done by Florida State University that shows exactly what I just said.
Okay, what did they show exactly? Show me the beneficial fly that's better off than the ordinary fly they started with.
Sure, I would be happy to. I can send it to you. I don't know if I can read the entire study right now.
Okay.
This is a pretty common feature. If you want to look at it, it's David Hoyle and Gear Bolstead. The mutation predicts 40 million years of flywing evolution through these experiments. So we've observed this. We can observe the better surviving flies just through changes in microevolution, and we can observe it in not just flies, but also mice and rats and all kinds of things, and E. coli and bacteria. And the reason we need to get new vaccines every year is because the bacteria that we had the vaccine to prevent has died off, and one with the new mutation has made it stronger so that it's now immune to the antibacterial. So we see this all the time.
I will search. No, we do not see this all the time. And let's take one topic at a time. I will search for the article by David Hoyle, Florida State University. You're saying they developed a better wing. Would you please elaborate on that? What do you mean they got a better wing? You mean they actually caused a fly to have better wings with this mutation with 40 million years condensed into one lifetime?
You'd have to read the study. I'm not an expert on it, but I'm pretty sure that would be. So, but just let's go with the easy one that we all know and love, is that we need new vaccines for every kind of new bacteria. We have an antibacterial. The antibacterial stops working because of microevolution that makes the bacterial stronger, so it's immune to the antibacterial. So we need to get a new one.
Okay. I think you will find that in every case, something that is causing, let's take the bacterial infection, okay? And they develop something, an antibacterial, that will kill those bacteria. And then one of them all of a sudden is not killed by that antibiotic for whatever reason. It is always a loss of information. Go back to my analogy of they're coming through handcuffing everybody, hauling them off to kill them, and you don't have any arms, so they can't handcuff you. Oh, well, that's not beneficial. It's beneficial for the moment. You get to survive, and eventually the whole population may be armless. And now they can't handcuff them anymore. That would be an example. So now they need a new vaccine. Well, let's get leg cuffs, okay, instead. That's the type of thing you're doing here. You're seeing bacteria that somehow survived against an antibiotic because they had a loss of information. You did not demonstrate they had new information. You demonstrated they survived. That would be the same with armless people surviving in a society where they're handcuffing people. That's not new information, and it's not helpful. And if you put those bacteria that did survive out into the population of all the other bacteria, they wouldn't survive. They're just against that one particular threat, that one particular antibiotic. In the wild, this doesn't happen in nature. It is imagination SpongeBob stuff to think that it does. So, no, you have not given any examples. They have to develop new vaccines. I would be against the whole vaccine industry to begin with. I think the whole concept is wrong, but that's a different story. But if you're giving somebody a vaccination to prevent them from getting a particular disease, and all of a sudden the vaccine stops working and they get that disease anyway, that means that whatever the item was that is causing the disease, the bacteria, the parasite, whatever, may have developed a resistance to that antibiotic or that vaccine, but it didn't do so by getting new information. It lost its arms. It can't be handcuffed now. All the examples I'm aware of in this field, especially with vaccinations, et cetera, are examples of losing information, not gaining. And if you want to think that that is going to turn an amoeba to a whale over trillions or quadrillions of years, you can believe that if you want, but that's not science. It's not observable. It's a religious belief. And I admire your faith. I don't admire your science in that instance, but I admire your faith.
So we can definitely see it's gaining. It's not losing information. It has a longer genetic code and new functions.
We do not see it's gaining information. We don't see that. We see it as surviving. That doesn't mean it's gaining information. Why do you not see that?
Right. So I just define new information as it can do something new that none of the other things could ever do before
That's
it.
not information. That's like somebody with no arms can now survive when they're handcuffing people. That's not new information. That's a loss of information. The bacteria have a loss of information somewhere that now the antibiotic can't hook up to it, can't kill it, can't dehydrate it, or whatever, however it's killing it. You did not demonstrate that it's new information. It may be surviving now, the other ones wouldn't, but as I said, that's not new information, and it's not helpful to the bacteria. And in the general population, it would die off or be blended back. It wouldn't survive. There are no examples where this happens, where it survives and takes over the population. We don't know that that butterfly that took over the population, assume the story is true, the butterfly took over the population and now all of them are resistant to that bacteria. It is still a butterfly. It didn't gain any new functions. It's a butterfly.
So if bacteria didn't take over the population, then why do we have to give the injections to everyone? It doesn't make any, it doesn't, I don't really follow your logic here, because it seems like the new bacteria does take over the population of pretty much everyone and affects everyone because it does take over the population.
Well, it would take over the population with an inferior bacteria that can't be killed because something went wrong, something mutated in that bacteria. Now that antibiotic can't latch onto it to kill it. I think if you study this at the microscopic level, you'll see it lost information. Usually in the, if I recall, some of the examples have been where the cell wall no longer has the right portals for the antibacteria to enter it and kill it. I don't have the details on that. It's been years and years since I studied that. But again, it was a loss of information, not a gain. And you're welcome to believe this stuff, but it's guys like you that want to force all the kids in the public schools to learn this stuff like it is science, and you want to force all the people in America to pay you for it while it happens. That's unconstitutional. That's not common sense. It's not even morally right.
So we have an example of, I have no idea how to pronounce this. It's MRSA. It's a new strain of Streptococcus, something or another. It's adapted to become immune to all of the antiviral and antibacterial stuff because it's gained a new function where it can process those things, which could never have done before. It's not a loss of information. It's a new information that's been gained. You can, the Wikipedia is what I'm using right here. It's pretty easy if you could go to it and look at it. It's fairly obvious. It is definitely gaining information because it has a new function. It's processing. It's taking the antibacterial or the response mechanism and doing something physically different to it. So it's not a loss of information. It's not like losing your hands. It's like gaining more hands.
I'll have to see that to believe that. I'd also have to point out that this does not demonstrate that that process can be carried on for long periods of time and therefore turn a bacteria to a whale. That is, it does not explain that at all. It's this is one tiny step, like saying, look, I can jump 6 inches high, therefore we could jump to the moon if we practice enough. No, you cannot jump to the moon no matter how much you practice.
Right, this is just a +1. This is just a +1. And if we can add +1 to +1 to +1 to +1, it's pretty reasonable to believe that it'll keep going to +1 trillion if you take a long enough time, right? You said that was reasonable.
But you're appealing to the unseen. This is where it becomes a religion, not a science. This is not observable. Nobody ever sees any bacteria produce a non-bacteria. Never.
Right. And we've never seen a human being ever count to 1 trillion. It's just not even possible for a human being to do. But we can still say, because we can count from 1 to 100, that we can infer that that same process can get to 1 trillion.
There's no question. You could count to 1 trillion if you had enough time and had nothing else to do and had somebody paying for your lunch while you did it. I think that'd be a complete waste of time. Just get a computer to do it. I taught math. Okay, but that's not example that's going to turn a bacteria to a whale. So, and it's not new information. It's a survivability thing. It may be able to survive now where it couldn't before. You may get a bacteria that learns to actually eat and live off of the antibiotic that you give it. Wow, that's like me being on an island learning to live off of, coconut shells. I suppose if you are starving, you could learn, ask people that have gone to concentration camps, have learned to live off some pretty unsavory things. Their body adapted to that. During World War II, the zoos in England, they said, look, no more meat for the lions. Sorry, we got to give it to the soldiers. And so the lions, very reluctantly, learned to live off of cabbage and vegetation. They already had a digestive system. They already had a mouth and a chewing system, a teeth and salivary glands. They didn't get any new information. They just adapted to a new diet. That's all. And they're still a lion. And when all was said and done, after the war was over, they gave them meat. Now they could go back to what they were before. That was an adaptation. And what you're describing is an adaptation, not a new information. I don't think we're going to get anywhere with this, Tom. You've already got it settled in your head what you want to believe. So is there any other topics you'd like to discuss? I disagree. There's no new information in the fly or the bacteria or anything. There's an adaptation to the environment, which is not new information.
All right, so I can not use the term new information. I can say that the microevolution causes the DNA to change, and there's the new child can have a better survivability. And then that new child can have microevolution, which causes its genetics change, and that its child can have better survivability. And if we keep adding survivability, then the child that's like 1 trillion down the line will have a whole lot more survivability than the first child. So much so that it could possibly explain all the different species of life, because they all have different levels of survivability.
That's a fairy tale. But you're welcome to believe it. That's not what we see. What we see is cows produce cows, and you get varieties that happen. You get cows that give more milk, cows that have more beef, cows that can run faster, but you're never going to get a cow with a jet engine that can travel around the world in 24 minutes. You're not going to happen. There are limits. Yes, there are variations that happen, but there are limits to the variation, and they have to already be in the gene code.
I agree completely. So as far as I know, the limits on evolution are, one, it can only create things that are selected for by the environment. It can't break the laws of physics, and it can't break the laws of logic. Those are essentially the limitations. And as far as I can tell, again, all forms of life are just different combinations of ATCG. So if you have one single-celled organism even that can mutate and have a child who has more survivability, and that mutates and have a child to have even more survivability, which we can observe this in fruit flies and butterflies and rats and mice. We see this happening just with microevolution, where some children have more survivability than others. It seems reasonable, since this more survivability is just a different combination of the ATCG, that we can get the entire diversity of life starting from a single cell with just that ATCG and more levels of survivability. Just like counting 1 + 1 + 1 + 1, we can do to 100. We can't do it to 1 trillion, but it's reasonable to believe that we can go with this process to 1 trillion. They seem like to be the exact same thing to me. I don't see the difference.
I really believe you that you don't see the difference. Now that I believe, okay? I wish you would. And all life form is not just CATG, okay? Just like all books in the world are not just ABC. No. They're ABC arranged in a particular order to portray thoughts. There's more to a book than just ink on paper. It's not just ink on paper. It's ink in a particular shape, like the letters of the alphabet, arranged in a particular order, like common sense English sentence structure and paragraph structure, etc. So all of life is not just a simple CATG. It's just not. That is the letters of the alphabet that we write the biological code with, and all the proteins are written with that code, and the lines of code do have CATG arranged in a particular order. And it's very easy for that to go bad. If you had a computer that could read books, and as soon as it came across a misspelled word, it shut the computer down, shut it down. Okay? That would be similar to mutations happening in this code. CATG, something goes wrong, computer shuts down. Life stops, it dies. And Tom, I don't think I'm going to get you to see this. I think we're wasting our time here. You said you don't believe in a God. You really think this process you're describing can explain how we got here? Is that going to form the world? Is that going to create life to begin with? Is that going to change an amoeba to a whale over trillions of years? You really believe that?
Yeah, I think so. I think we can see the relation between an amoeba and a whale is the exact same as the relation between you and your cousins and your children and your parents. We can see it in the DNA. We can just do a DNA comparison between you and your parents and see that you both have the same genetic modification that only exists in your family and no one else's family. And we can do the same thing between whales and amoeba or any other species and show they are similarly have a DNA pattern that only exists between that branch of the family tree.
And all of this happened by chance for no reason. What is the purpose of life, Tom? What's going to happen when you die?
I have no idea.
You're not worried about it?
Not really. I think that we can't. Why should I be afraid of something that can't exist at the same time I do by definition?
Okay. If you're happy with that, we'll see you Judgment Day. So you're not worried about what you die because you can't be dead and alive at the same time. Brilliant logic. Brilliant. So you're not worried about driving because as long as you're driving, you're okay. You don't worry about the other cars because you haven't wrecked them yet.
Well, I think it's equally as likely that any one alternative of what's going to happen after I die is no more plausible than any other. And so thinking that maybe I could, for example, if I converted to Christianity and thinking I could go to heaven for that, it's just as likely that there's a God who will send you to hell for believing in Christianity. So there's no reason for me to pick one or the other. And it seems like I should just withhold judgment because that's probably the most reasonable approach.
All right. I have in my hand an ink pen. Let's see, where's this thing made at? I don't know, don't care. But this had a designer, quite obviously, and it was designed for a purpose to, transmit ink to paper so you could write things. I think it's obvious that all life on Earth had a designer, and it was designed for a purpose. Our job is to find out what is that purpose and who is this designer? Does he want anything out of me or she? Do they expect anything? I think that's very logical to say, hey, just like you can find a screw on the parking lot and say, this didn't happen by chance, somebody designed this screw. I think it's reasonable to say somebody designed the code, somebody designed the order the code is put into, CATG, to make these proteins. Somebody designed the arrangement of all these proteins to make these cells. If you choose to not see a creator, well then, okay. The Bible talks in 2 Peter chapter 3 that in the last days, there would be scoffers who would come who would be willingly ignorant about the creation. That's you, Tom. Put your name by that verse, 2 Peter chapter 3. Put your name there. That's you. You don't want to believe. It wouldn't matter what I showed you. You don't want to believe.
That's kind of true because I see a big problem with Christianity in the fact that if there was an all-good, all-powerful God, it would have created the best of all possible worlds. And we clearly don't live in the best of all possible worlds, so there can't be an all-good, all-powerful God.
Okay. So all cars should run forever, and they don't. Therefore, nobody makes cars.
Well, an all-powerful designer definitely doesn't make them. So somebody who's limited makes them.
Or a powerful creator did make it, and we messed it up. Maybe it's our fault it's not working right, not his. And maybe he's going to fix it back one day like he intended it originally. It wouldn't be right for God to make Adam and Eve as robots. He made Adam and Eve and gave them freedom of choice. Just like it's not right for you to grab your wife around the neck and say, tell me you love me or I'm going to smack you. Well, that's not right, okay? You want her to want to love you voluntarily. If she doesn't want to, okay. But you don't force that kind of thing. And God's not going to force you to serve him or love him or even believe in him. You can do whatever you want. I think he made it really obvious with everything in nature. You could look at an amoeba under the microscope and you'd have to say, wow, there's a designer. We take the tour of our property here at Dinosaur Adventureland in Lenox, Alabama. We show the people where there's whole rows of trees planted in nice, neat rows because it was a gravel pit for years. After they got done mining the gravel, they planted the trees and they put them in nice, neat rows. That doesn't happen naturally. I have no idea who planted the trees, but I know somebody planted them because they're in a row. That just speaks of design. When I look through a microscope or a telescope or just my eyeballs, I can see design everywhere I look. You don't want to see design because that would mean a designer and you're running from him for some reason. I don't know. We'll see you Judgment Day. But the Bible says God made man and he gave him freedom of choice. And some have chosen they don't want to believe in him. Okay. But I'm going to feel real foolish Judgment Day. Real foolish.
So from my perspective, I think if there was an all-good, all-powerful God, it would have created a world where every single person essentially gets their own universe and they can do whatever they want with it. You can still have free will and suffering and evil. You just aren't forced involuntarily into any position that you don't voluntarily choose to be a part of. And that seems to me the only world that an all-good, all-powerful God could create. Anything else is just, by definition, slavery. So because we don't each have our own universe that we can choose to be a part of, and we're forced against our will to be a part of this world, it means that God must necessarily be immoral for putting us into this situation.
So you want to create God in your image. I see. That's what the devil wanted to do in Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28. He wanted to become God. I think that's what you want, Tom. You want to be God. You want to create your own universe. Go ahead. Go make one.
Well, I think that's if there was an all good God, he would have done this. I don't want to be God. I want every individual to have sovereignty over themselves. And so no individual should be able to force any other individual to do anything they don't consent to, including
Okay,
God.
wait. Would that include forcing kids in public school to learn evolution even though they don't want to learn it? Do you think that should be forced on all the kids in the public school? They should all be made to learn this theory?
Well, I think they should have their own universe and they can do whatever they want in it.
Well, they don't. So meanwhile, in this universe, kids who believe in God go to public school and their textbooks say it all happened by chance. There is no God. The earth is billions of years old. And yet the kids who read their Bible say, no, the earth is about 6,000 years old. That's what this book teaches. And that's what I believe. Should we force all kids in the public schools to be taught the earth is billions of years old and dinosaurs died out millions of years ago? Should that be forced on all the kids?
I think the schools should teach what is supported by the evidence. Whatever is supported by the most evidence is what should be taught in schools.
So you're saying, yes, we should force them to believe that because you happen to think that is supported by the most evidence. What if I think the most evidence supports the fact that dinosaurs lived with man? They called them dragons. People killed them. They always lived with man. How about that's what the evidence really shows? I mean, why are there thousands of legends of dragons? There are also thousands of sightings in the last 100 years or so of that maybe some dinosaurs still alive, like Loch Ness Monster type stuff. I'll watch my video 3. I think the evidence clearly supports dinosaurs did not live millions of years ago. They've always lived with man, maybe under a different name, a dragon or something, and that they're part of normal creation. I think everybody should be forced to learn that. How's that go?
If that was supported by the evidence, I would totally agree with you. But I don't see the difference. Like, how do you get to the
Supported by the evidence, and so do the majority of Americans. How come a minority, 10% of the population that claim to be atheists, how come the minority of your people are able to force their belief on everybody? Why don't you guys go start your own private school and force your belief on those kids who want to come? See, they have to go to school. This is not something optional. So you are forcing everybody against their will to learn what you want them to learn. I don't care what the evidence shows. Even that is just simply morally wrong. And how can there be morals anyway if there's no God? I got to go. Tom, time's up. I got lots going on here. But thank you for having me on your program. And if anybody would like to do this again sometime, I'd be honored. But I don't think you made any headway at all in proving your point. Certainly not to me, you haven't. And if you want to believe this new information comes from rearranging, scrambling letters of the alphabet, enjoy yourself. But it's not science.
Well, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you giving me your time, and I hope to talk with you again sometime.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.